Hey everyone, this is me, the Undead Viking, and this is Bigfoot vs. Yeti. Bigfoot vs. Yeti is a game from Shoot Again Games from Diane and Nick Sauer, a married couple who happen to also design board and card games in their spare time. This is a card game, as I said, for 2 to 4 players that kind of uses some time-honored, like classic card game mechanisms as far as like having a hand of cards and picking cards up and discarding cards and so forth. I'll explain how to play the game in just a little bit. The theme of this is that each person is playing a cryptozoologist, and you're all trying to kind of prove that certain mythical beasts exist, whether it happens to be aliens or the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoots and Yetis, as it said. It's a heck of a lot of fun. Let me show you how the game is played, and we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. This is Bigfoot vs. Yeti, and this is the deck of cards you're going to get with the game. Now, I've shuffled them up, and the first thing you're going to do is whoever is dealing, you're going to turn the top card over and you're going to put it down. Now, this is an expedition card, and I'll explain what expedition cards and other things are here in just a little bit. But at this point, each player, I'm not going to deal out every single hand, each player would be dealt a hand of 10 cards. Now, this is important because the way this works is that the round is going to continue until one person goes out, meaning that they've used up all the cards that are in their hand. The way the game will work on almost every single turn is that you are either going to draw the card that it has been discarded, or in the discard part, which is called the tabloids, or draw a card off the top of the deck, which is called the unknown. So let's look at the 10 cards that we have. Alright, so we got an expedition card that is both the Bigfoot and Yeti, and that is a very important part of the game because of the fact that it is like kind of a contest between the two types of the crypto animals or whatever. I remember as a kid, right? Bigfoot and Yeti were like the same thing, but they're from different territories or different worlds or whatever. And so we got a Loch Ness Monster expedition, a sewer alligator expedition, a chupacabra expedition. Looks like we got lots of Mothman expedition cards. Cool. We got a blurry photo, which is a wild card, proof card, if you will. Oh, and that's a proof card that we have for the Mothman. And then I got a phenomenon card. So let's just talk about the phenomenon card really quick. When you play phenomenon cards, they are just like kind of like a one-time card that you get to use. It says like crop circles, draw 2 cards from the unknown or retrieve 1 card from the tabloids. The card retrieved may be immediately played even if it's an action card and cannot be used to retrieve another crop circle card. So like you couldn't just continue a chain. See, when you're doing is like you can play a card from your hand like this, but mostly what you're going to be doing, because there aren't a ton of these, most of what you're going to be doing on your turn is you're either going to be starting an expedition, or you are going to be joining an expedition that has already occurred. Now the big thing is that you're be placing your cards in front of you. In like a tableau in front of you, and it's important that you keep your cards in front of you, even though like somebody like later on, somebody starts up a Loch Ness Monster expedition, say the player across the table from me starts a Loch Ness Monster, I could join that expedition by playing this card in front of me. You don't put it in front of the other player, because if you put it in front of the other player, you can't get any points for it. And I'll talk about scoring here in just a little bit. So on your turn, what you're going to be doing is you are going to be either joining up to 2 different expeditions, starting your own expedition, and then maybe joining another expedition, and then discarding a card. Now, the discarding a card is a very important aspect. At the end of your turn, you are going to discard a card. You always have to discard a card, and that's a process that signifies that the next player gets to go. When you discard the card, if it is your last card in your hand, you are considered to be the person that went out. That's not a bad thing. It just signifies that this is going to be the end of that particular round, and we're going to soon go into the scoring. So we actually have a decent number of cards to start an expedition, because we have these 3 Mothman cards, if you will. All right, so what we could do with these 3 cards, we have these 2 expedition cards, and we have this proof card, which can contribute. And you notice these numbers here, this 2, 2, 4, they allow us these are the points that these cards will be worth. Now, I'm going to point out this blurry photo proof card. This is the blurry photo. It can be used like any to help out. It's like kind of like a wild card, if you will. It's a blurry photo of some crypto animal. So it could be a Mothman. It could be a Yeti. It could be a Loch Ness monster, whatever. And that's why it does not have a suit or a suit color, as you can see. So like you notice that these three all have these same colors, like so. They all are blue. One other thing about these cards is whenever you see this lightning bolt here, that means that that is an action card. And you may play one action card during your turn. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So if I was able to play, if I played like this phenomenon card as my action card, then technically, since I can only play one action card each, I would not be able to put these three cards together to form my expedition, because you have to have three cards to form an expedition, because this card also has that action symbol on it as well. So if I do this action, what I can do then is I can place these three cards down to form an expedition. And if I, like as I said, if I wanted to, I could not use this one, and I could use this blurry photo if I wanted to. The thing is that after you've done doing that, you have the option of joining another expedition. You can even join one that you've already set up in front of you, or joining one of the other ones as well. If you don't mount an expedition, you can do two join actions, as I said. So if we put these three cards down, like so, to show that we are mounting an expedition, and you can place them however you like, just so everybody can see like which one you're using and which one you're doing. Then you can they can see that you've started this expedition. Now this is a very important thing, because people are either going to want to join up with this expedition so they can cash in on the points at the end of the round, or they may try to discard cards into the tabloids that have the Mothman designation, because those will detract from the points that you're going to get. And I'll explain that here in just a little bit when we show what happens at the end of the round. Now I'm going to cheat just a little bit, and I'm going to dig through, and I'm going to find a couple of expedition cards out of the deck that will show for like the Yeti or the a Bigfoot, if you will. So here, perfect. So if I had, now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. If I had these three cards, so I had this expedition card that is a Bigfoot expedition card, and I had these two expedition cards as well, I could play all three of these like so, to show that I've started a search for the Bigfoot of the expedition. Now, if these cards, as you notice, are also a Yeti on the other side. And so later on, and here I'm going to show you, because when you place an expedition, you do get to take the action that's on the card. No matter how many cards you do put down, though, you can only take the action of the designated suit, which in this case would be the Bigfoot suit, once during your turn. So it says, when you mount or join a Bigfoot expedition, you may take a Bigfoot Yeti card from an opponent, flip it to the Bigfoot side, and then add it to your Bigfoot expedition. So what that means is, so let's say, and this is where like the Bigfoot versus Yeti comes into play. So let's say we have these three here, like so. And somebody, like let's say this player over here, has started, that's the Yeti expedition, and they have, let me just find a couple of these Yeti Bigfoot cards, if you will, because they're going to have them set to the Yeti side of the card, like that. And then let me grab one more out of the deck here. So when they have those, my goal is, because when you do the Bigfoot versus Yeti combat, not really technically combat, basically compare scores at the end of the round, you're going to hope that your Bigfoot has more points, because then the Bigfoot scores and the Yeti doesn't. So when you play that, what you can do is you can take one of these, you bring it over here, but you flip it and you add it to your tableau like so. So that would be mounting an expedition and then taking the action that the expedition has. And I should mention that all of the expedition cards have those actions on them. So like here's this Mothman. It says when you mount or join a Mothman expedition, you may draw 3 cards from the unknown, keep 1, and then put the other 2 back in any order. So when I've done that, that's when I could have drawn 3 of these cards, kept 1, and put it back. Now I think that's really interesting because a lot of the special abilities of these actions or whatever will like allow you to draw more cards and put cards into your hand. So you aren't always going to be getting, because remember you discard a card at the end of each round or end of each action or turn that you take. Because you're drawing more, you're not necessarily going to go out on your turn. You know, it's going to be a situation where you are, you know, like, and going out is actually kind of an important aspect, because when you do go out, obviously you end the turn. And so now let's just say this had gone forward a little bit, we've been playing, and let's say somebody else had been like playing a lot of, like they had a lot of points in sewer alligators, and so when my discard went down like that, I would want to add that to the discard. Now, of course, the next person can pick that card up instead of taking it from the unknown. So if this person was building an expedition and they had a lot of sewer alligator cards, I wouldn't probably want to do that. But if the person that was doing the sewer alligators was over here somewhere playing the game, then, you know, there's a good chance that, you know, another card would have come over and covered that one up, and so then they would not be able to grab it and add it. Now, why is that important? All right, so after somebody goes out, you're going to score, and people are going to have several, you know, cards in front of them. You know, like if I joined like a Loch Ness Monster expedition, I would have put that one down. Maybe I joined a Chupacabra expedition, I put that one down, and so forth, right? All right, so after all is said and done, you go through the discard pile, and this would be a lot larger, actually. I'm going to actually just purposely take cards out here to show you how this works. But what happens is that if you have this is the tabloids, right? So we've all seen the tabloids, you know, Moth, you know, Bat Boy Lives, that sort of thing or whatever, and those discredit these expeditions that you've gone on. Now, you might have actually done a really good job. Maybe you found some, like, Bigfoot fur or whatever, done things to, like, make it sound like what you're doing is like, real and true and have you. But if there turns up to be Bigfoot cards or whatever, you know, then, like, you know, here, like, so let's say, you know, somebody, you like, remember I mentioned that sewer alligators. So if one of the players had you know, a bunch of the sewer alligator cards over their side, let me just grab a bunch of them out of this deck here, and they had used those to build up an expedition. Let's just put them over here and say that, you know, this player over here had a lot of these sewer alligator expedition cards over there, and like, so we've signified the end of the game, and you know, we're going to go through the discard pile. Now, or the tabloids, I should say. For every card that's here that is represented as, like, part of the successful, like, expeditions. Well, not necessarily technically. I'll mention, like, there's a proven expedition and then just an expedition. I'll talk about that in a second. For every one of these, you have to discard one of the cards that's on there. So in this case, with 2 in the discard, and obviously the discard pile will be a lot larger, you know, this person would end up having to discard 2. If 2 people have the exact same number, and it's always the person who has the most of these cards that discards them. As soon as, so like, let's say instead there was one person, like let's say there was 2 players and they had 2 of these, you know, at one point, and so when they had, both of them would end up discarding for each one. And so as you can see, like, if one person, you know, started off with 1 more than the other, and you know, had and that person would discard 1. As soon as they're even, they would start discarding the cards as they happen. Now this, as I said, it gets a little tricky towards the end, because one of the things about this game is you do have to kind of remember what's hitting the discard pile. And as you're playing it, you will build up these expeditions that are represent, and basically suits, right? You're building up a suit that you think is going to score you a bunch of points. But you have to be on the lookout and paying attention and watching what other people are discarding, and making sure that they aren't ending up discarding things that are going to be taking away from, like, the point totals that you're building up. All right, so you've taken care of that process. You've gone through the tabloids. This is how you're going to score. You've gone through the tabloids and you've discarded the different cards from the different expeditions because of what was in the tabloids. Then you're going to compare the number of Yeti cards to the number of Bigfoot cards. If the Bigfoot card has more points, not necessarily the number of cards, but more points than other cards in play, then they would win, and the same goes for the Yeti. Whichever side wins, the other one doesn't score any points at all. And if they happen to tie, neither will score any points. So then you total the points for all cards of the same expedition type among all of the players. And expeditions that score 10 or more points are considered to be proven, meaning you've actually proven the fact that, like, the Loch Ness Monster exists, or Chupacabra, or what have you. And then those points are all considered to be doubled. If you didn't score 10 total points, and that's the 10 total points on the board, and not just on one person, then you just get normal points. Basically, you had expeditions that brought up a few pieces of evidence that are leaning people towards believing, but you haven't proven the existence of the cryptozoological creature. Try to say that 5 times fast. All right, so then the other crazy thing that can happen is, and basically after you score all the points, if anybody scored 100, has 100 total points, because you're going to play multiple rounds of this, if anybody scores, first person to 100 points will win the game. Now, there's one other crazy thing. Now, if you're familiar with games like this, you might be familiar with the concept of shooting the moon. So, to shoot the moon, what you have to do is you have to manage to prove that aliens exist. And you do this if it's tough to do. I've done it once, but it is very difficult to pull off. So there are these expedition cards that are for aliens, and there's also a proof card for aliens, the Alien Autopsy film. Now, as you can see, there's one 4-point card, and then there are all these that have scored 2 points. If one player manages to score 10 or more points with just alien cards in front of them, and they are the person that goes out, meaning that they trigger the end of the round, the alien, according to the rules, the alien mothership lands on Earth and declares that person the supreme ruler of the planet. They are going to score double points, and nobody else scores any points at all. So basically, if you understand, like, the concept of shooting the moon or in card games is just that. You score a bunch of points and nobody else scores any. And but just, you know what I mean. So it's tough to do, and basically people might see you gunning for it, the only way I was able to do it was I had a bunch of these cards in my hand, and I collected them slowly one by one, and then I mounted a big expedition all at once, and managed to go out at the exact same time. But when you do, even though it is rare, it is extremely satisfying if you pull that off. All right, so this is a pretty straightforward card game. I mean, it's one of those things where, and there is a genre of this type of card game. I think it's called Mystery Rummy or something like that. And the designers are very well versed in these. They had another version, and I shouldn't say another version of it, but like a Mystery Rummy type game that I did a review of a while back. I forget what the name is offhand, but it's a lot of fun. I do like when you can have a throwback to, like, the games that I played with, like, my grandparents at lake cottages, just these types of set collection games that, I play with normal decks of cards, but then you throw in, like, the designer, board / card game flourish, and I just, time-honored traditions as far as mechanisms go, but with that extra little kick that our hobby gives it, and the game is a heck of a lot of fun. And I'm able to play these games with my parents. They really, really love it, and I do love bridging the gap between them and myself. So I'll talk about more about all of that in my final thoughts. There we go. Bigfoot versus Yeti. All right, so a couple of quick things. So when I was a kid, I really dug the whole, like, who does the Loch Ness Monster exist? I don't think it does. But, I really liked the whole paranormal world. I remember going into the library all the time and going to, for whatever reason, like books about like UFOs and the Loch Ness Monster and, these crazy, strange, weird things that, who knows if they exist or not kind of stuff, were always in the non-fiction area, which I thought was cool. Meaning that it was real, right? And it was like at the very, very beginning of the Dewey Decimal System. Is it Dewey or Dewey Dewey? Anyway, so like the 001.2 or whatever, right? Which I thought was cool, that it was like, it was easy to find. And I remember sneaking over into the adult, section of the library. Remember there was like, I don't know if you had this, but there was the children's library, and then there was the adult library, and obviously children tend to be louder. That's why they separated them. But I remember I read like every single book in my school library and in my public library that had those. And like, for whatever reason, I always remembered like there was an author by the name of Daniel Cohen. It seems like he wrote like all of those books for whatever reason. I wonder if who that guy was. Maybe I should look that guy up on Wikipedia or something. But anyway, regardless, but I remember I would sneak over into the where the adults were like quietly reading newspapers and what have you, and I would see if they had any, and I was always disappointed that there just kind of really wasn't a lot of those. I mean, I remember I did find like that book Ancient Astronauts over there by Von Daniken or whatever his name was. But anyway, I mean, so the reason I say that is I just really like the theme. Now, as I've grown older, I think that's one of the sad things about life is that as you get older, you kind of like, I don't know, you give up on the idea that those things really existed, right? So it's just kind of like, oh, it was so much more fun as a kid to believe in sea serpents and what have you. And it was cool to like, buy into the idea of ghosts or UFOs or whatever, but then you get old and then you worry about your mortgage. You don't have time to really be concerned about whether or not it just happened, if it's a weather balloon or not that's flying overhead. But anyway, regardless, I do like the theme. Now, I've already kind of covered in the gameplay portion of why I like it. I mean, it's one of those games, as I said, it's I think it falls under the mystery rummy type of world of games. Now, this might not. I'm not a big aficionado of that type of genre, if you will. Conspiracy. That was the name of the game before by them that I reviewed. Ah, man, just popped in my head. But anyway, but I like this. I mean, one, it's just a cool theme, but two, it's all about the different actions you take. It's about the different, like, the process, and I love the fact that, like, it's the tabloids, right? Like, how you can undermine people by putting their cards there and just kind of, like, jam them, and knowing full well that they're working really hard on putting together one of those things, and being able to stick them with it. And one of the other things that I like is that, like, if you haven't seen a UFO card for a while, and it isn't you, it has like 4 of them in your hand, and then you look over and you see like somebody you draw from the unknown, right? And you get a UFO card. And there's something really satisfying about the fact of like discarding it and then watching somebody like their brow furrows a bit because they realize that they're not going to probably get that card, and it's going to be buried in the tabloids, and their idea of like taking a shot at completing the UFO gambit not going through. I've done that a few times, more often than I have obviously of pulling off the UFO process, but very cool when you can pull that off. It's one of those things where it could have been about anything, obviously. You could have not even had a theme to the game and just had like a color and then just put down what have you, whatever you wanted to on it. But I mean, it was something. There's something cool about like incorporating this like paranormal activity, if you will, into the game that I found very endearing and a great deal of fun. It's something that you can teach to people in about 5 minutes. If they've played any kind of gin type of game, you know, where it's just basically you're trying to make sets and then, you know, be able to have them and put them down. You like I said, I played this with my parents and I was able to teach them very, very quickly, you know, and I really like that. I like the fact that it's something that you can put into your game collection, that when you do have like a holiday and you don't have your gaming group over, you can definitely, you know, spring it upon your family, and you can teach them that game really, really quickly, and they can just, you know, and they can begin exploring the hobby that you really love a lot, in a way that, you know, isn't intimidating as far as rules and whatever. One of the biggest things with my wife, like, I really love playing games with my wife, but my wife always says to me, you know, it's like, if you can teach me the rules to the game in 10 minutes or less, then let's play. Otherwise, you know, she's, you know, it's a hurdle, right? You know, and that's fine. Not every game is for every person, but, you know, finding games that can get past those hurdles and allow people to, like, everybody at the table, and incorporate more and more people outside of, you know, your circle of hardcore gamers, I think is a very welcome addition to any collection. And if you dig card games, if you want to find something like that, I definitely suggest you take a look at this one, because I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. So there you go. If you have any questions about Bigfoot versus Yeti, please ask away. I'll be happy to answer those as best as I can. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, I am the Undead Viking, and I am telling you to have yourself one heck of an awesome day. Alright, goodbye.